I'm somewhere super special today. This is one of my favourite plant shops. It's a place called Ultra Nursery. And the reason that I'm here is to tell you all about why I will never buy plants from a place like Bunnings or Home Depot or any of those big box hardware stores. It's all about the crimes against the plant world. But also, I thought it's really well worth showing you why visiting your local independent nursery is so worthwhile, all through the lens of the world of cacti and succulents. So this is going to be a bit of a two-parter today. We're going to start off by looking at those egregious, hideous crimes against plants that you will find at a place like Bunnings. And then I'll take you on a bit of a tour, show you some of my favourite little corners in what's an otherwise fairly modest little nursery. So let's go check it out. Let's not delay any longer. Now, before I take you on a tour of this fantastic place, let's talk about plant crimes. Some of the hideous things I've seen at Bunnings on my last 2 or 3 visits. Now, before I dig into them, I want to stress this isn't to cast aspersions on the wonderful staff at Bunnings. They're fighting against a system that is designed to make plants unhappy. They keep them in dimly lit, horrible, unsuitable places or exposed to the elements when they shouldn't be. The whole idea is this rapid turnover of plants, and anything that doesn't get sold within a week or two is almost destined for a sad, miserable decline into death. So with all that in mind, I thought I'd share with you just some of those hideous things that I've seen recently. These plant crimes have been ordered from least terrible to most extreme. And the first is the practice of gluing top dressing around the base of cacti. I don't really understand its purpose. It's annoying, it gets in the way, it's hideous and it's ugly. It doesn't cause plants any real great harm, but it's just dumb. And the next crime is etiolated plants. Those are those plants that are stretching for light. And it doesn't come as a surprise that cacti, especially at Bunnings, are like this. They treat them as indoor plants when they grow in the high desert. It doesn't make any sense. And so naturally, any plant that sits on a shelf too long there is going to start sending out long, stretched, warped growth. Pretty hideous. But you can always just chop it off at the top and they'll pop out. And if you're giving them proper light, they will return to some semblance of their normal form eventually. Now we're getting into some crimes that are truly unfortunate. You're talking about when you're wasting your money. The first of those are lithops left out in the rain. Now, anyone who knows anything about lithops knows that they have a very demanding watering schedule. You can't just water them whenever you like. And unless you live somewhere that replicates their habitat, you can't just leave them out in the rain. There's a very good chance that the lithops that I saw on a recent trip that were just getting pounded with water probably were destined to rot very, very quickly. But you wouldn't know that until weeks or even months later. So, bit of a waste of money there, but doesn't affect any of your other plants. And on that note, there are always a few plants that are just straight up rotten. Sometimes it's obvious. You can see them flopping all over the place and you wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole. But sometimes it's less obvious and they might have root rot and you actually have to pluck them out of their pot to notice. Again, it's a waste of money. It's not ideal, but it's not going to have a big impact on anything else. There are always amongst them just straight up dead plants that are sitting there on the shelf that can't be revived. Now, for most people, I would hope that we can identify a plant when it's dead, but I do know that cacti, sometimes it's not clear. Sometimes they've got a dense covering of spines, and so death isn't always the most obvious thing. And so it strikes me as a little bit unfortunate and a degree unethical that there would be dead plants on a shelf being sold for full price. But by far the most concerning of any of the plants that I've seen in my recent trips to Bunnings are those that are afflicted with pests. Check this one out. Do you want a cactus with your mealybugs or what? Absolutely revolting. And the problem with this is twofold. Number one, by keeping these plants on the shelf, there's a good chance that those mealybugs will spread, lay eggs on the other healthy plants around them, and so you take home a plant that you think is fine, until one day it's covered in mealybugs itself and they spread out through your collection. And that is where the big problem with these plants lie, because you're introducing a fairly insidious pest into your collection. And that's okay if you can identify them and recognize them. But the problem is, as we know, many cacti, they're fluffy. They've got little white flecks on them. And so for the inexperienced, it's not always the easiest thing to look at a plant and say, yeah, that's got mealybugs. That's going to potentially infect my whole collection. And so that's the number one reason why I would never, ever buy a plant from Bunnings, because you may just well be introducing a whole ecosystem of pests into your carefully cared for collection. Now, we don't really see this in Australia, but I'm reliably informed that overseas, particularly in the United States, there are plant crimes that are more about a loss of dignity than a lack of plant health. I am, of course, talking about the ridiculous practice of doing things like spray painting plants. Like sticking googly eyes onto plants. Or perhaps the least ethical of these, the practice of sticking a fake flower onto a plant. Trick the person into thinking this is flowering, so they'll buy it only to find that it's been glued onto your plant and it's actually detrimental to its appearance. A hideous practice, and thankfully not widespread over here, but they are three things that you absolutely should avoid, and you certainly wouldn't find, I hope, in your local independent nursery. So now we've looked at crimes against the plant kingdom, let's go on a quick tour. I'm going to show you three of my favourite areas of Ultra Nursery. Let's go. The first section of Ultra Nursery that I thought I'd share with you today is these big landscaping plants. They are genuinely impressive, as you can see. It's a modest collection, but there are some real interesting highlights. You've got, for example, your Cereus Forbesii spiralis. They're fantastic spiraling plants. They really get going when you get them into the ground. Myrtillocactus geometrizans with all those beautiful branching arms. And then you've got a couple of real big Euphorbia amac variegatas, which are becoming surprisingly popular landscaping plants all across Sydney. But there are some smaller plants here that are well worth investigating as well. I do like these little clumping euphorbias. There are some copper-leafed kalanchoes here. Even a delightful Euphorbia millii hybrid with these yellow and red kind of streaked flowers. Fantastic selection and a wonderful little taster of what's to come as we dig a bit further into this place. Now this is the dedicated succulent section of Ultra Nursery. Second stop on the tour, and probably my second favourite place in this garden centre. I thought that I would share with you some of the interesting things about it and show you some of the cool plants that they've got here. It's a really wonderful setup. In fact, this greenhouse structure here that they've built is exactly what I based my own backyard greenhouse off. It's just I adjusted the dimensions to suit my own space. But they do have some wonderful plants growing here, and the common denominator that you'll find is that they're all delightfully healthy. I'll give you a bit of a wander through, and then I'm going to point out some particular plants that have caught my eye today that are worth sharing with you. we start our tour of this succulent section in this back corner where we can find the cacti. And as you can see, we've got some big and we've got many that are small. Some are common and some are rarer, and some come from big wholesalers and others come from smaller independent growers, which is fantastic to see. As we move along, we come to the split rock section, which of course is home to our lithops. But we also have some more obscure things like our Playospilos, Aloanopsis, and then here, this thing, I've never even heard of it, a rhombophyllum. Very interesting looking plant. So wonderful variety. There are some syningias in the back there. You can see some of them going dormant, some of them still with their nice big fuzzy leaves. And then as we continue along on our journey, we come into the soft leaf succulent section. Aeoniums, Kalanchoes, many of them are cultivars, Sempervivums, Echeverias and Crassulas. Now these are the sorts of plants, I don't really give them a lot of focus on my channel. I don't grow a lot of them, but there are some really quite beautiful ones. Have a look at this little variegated Pachyvaria. That's quite a wonder to behold. And it continues on, more of these soft leaf things until we get to our Haworthias. The Haworthia section looks as though it's been pilfered a little bit lately. There's not a whole lot here, but there are some very nice plants nonetheless. And then as we continue, we get some other obscurities, some Adromiscus. You don't see a lot of Adromiscus in plant shops, but they're wonderful. Look at these fat little leaves. What an absolute delight. Now this place often has a wonderful collection of your little stinky plants, the things that I love, like your Stapelias and your Huernias. Today they've only got 2 of them, and I've already got these in my collection. This is a little Huernia zebrina variegata. Delightful plants, but I do love picking up stinky plants when they've got them here. Along the back, there's a delightful collection of agave hybrids, all different types. And at the front here, we've got a whole mix of aloe hybrids and cultivars. Some of them have got quite remarkable colours about them. Look at that. That's quite something to behold. Or even this one. Look at those leaf margins. Stunning, absolutely stunning. The things that breeders can do by mixing the genetics of different plants. But then we come to the section that truly grabs my heart. It is, of course, where we find our delightfully strange euphorbias. And they've got a real mix of them, some wonderfully common ones, like a Euphorbia mammillaris variegata. But there are also some that are a whole lot more strange. You'll notice, of course, your little pineapple heads. This is a hybrid between Obesa and Buplurifolia, and even some Madagascan ones. Euphorbia millii at the back here. And have a look at this. This is Euphorbia geroldii. Have a look at those flowers. Absolutely amazing. And I suppose, to finish it off, they've even got some Pachypodiums. How good's that? Now you will see that they've got loads of those plants that come from that big wholesaler in Australia, Paradisia. But unlike Bunnings, these ones are actually quite healthy. Like this Mammillaria celsiana, beautiful, wonderfully distinct little globose thing, which in time is going to have these delightful little rings of pink flowers around the apex of the plant. It's a stunning feature of your Mammillarias. But this plant is exemplary of all of those big wholesaler plants. They may not turn them over as quickly, but they're also cared for far more carefully. The end result is this thing is clearly pest-free, rot-free, and growing quite happily under this lovely shade structure here. But not only do they have those big wholesaler plants, they also do a lot of propagation themselves, and I think that's a real sign of a good plant store. It shows that horticultural expertise, the ability to reproduce and create your own plants. And this is a good example of it. This is a Chamaesyrius Silvestrii crest or cristate plant. You know me, I love mutant plants, and this is a fantastic example of it. Wonderful, delicate little thing. The non-mutant form of this is kind of a long trailing plant, but get it in crested form and it becomes this delightfully screwball, strange little thing. And I'm sure in time it'll become a bit more brain-like and a bit more warped and a bit more bizarre to look at. But it's really, really a joy to behold. And it's not the only mutant they've got here. You've got your Trichocereus brigesii, the penis cactus. There's a whole bunch of them right here. And amongst them all, its counterpoint, your Myrtillocactus geometrizans fuku roku ryu zinboku, the blue booby cactus, just hanging out amongst all of these things as well. All propagated internally and all a representation of that fantastic horticultural skill that I was talking about. But it's not just cacti that we've got hanging out behind me here. They've got a genuine diversity of real interesting succulent plants, things for all sorts of enthusiasts, including those of you that really love lithops. This one here is a Lithops pseudotruncatella, which in my opinion is one of the more beautiful lithops species. And just having a look at it, you can tell this thing here has been cared for perfectly. It's heading into that winter dormancy, that split stage. And you can tell that they know precisely how well to care for it. And delightfully, the soil that it's in is just nice, thick, gritty, chunky stuff. Exactly what they need to be. It's a world away from those sad little lithops seedlings sitting lonely, melting in the pouring rain that I saw at Bunnings that day. An absolute delight. They've got a whole heap of them, all cared for very precisely and kept in immaculate health. Now I know one of my big blind spots when it comes to talking about succulents are those soft leaf succulents, your echeverias, your crassulas, all of those sorts of things. They're not really my cup of tea, but for those of you that do like them, well, aren't you in for a treat at a place like this as well? An exemplar here, this is called Crassula frosti, a little very delicate, tiny little cultivar of your crassula. And the reason that I picked it up to show you is because currently it's in flower. And aren't they the most delicate, delightful little flowers that you've ever seen in your life? An absolute joy to behold, and almost cute enough to melt the heart of this hardened cactus lover. But maybe the thing that I enjoy most about coming to a place like this that has a wonderful variety of plants is that sometimes they've got the rare, sometimes they've got the genuinely obscure, and sometimes they've just got things that you don't really see out in mainstream stores. Let me start with this one. This is an agave Victoria Reginae Golden Princess. It's a delightful variegated form of that more common agave. You can see the leaf margins are kind of that golden yellow colour. It's a beautiful merger of, I suppose, beauty and heavy metal authority. Really, really cool plant. It's not necessarily cheap, it's $50, but still, this isn't a plant that you'd ever find at Bunnings. Delightful little rarity, and it's just exemplary of the wonderful range that they have in what is a relatively small space, bear in mind. Now, speaking about obscure plants, how's this? I've never even heard of this species. This is a euphorbia, Euphorbia saxonii. I've never even heard of the thing. It's got a fairly familiar looking growth habit, that kind of central trunk with all these arms coming off it, a little bit like perhaps your Euphorbia aeruginosa, and I'm sure there's a close relation there somehow. But in its own way, it's quite unique. And at $20, might even be tempted to pick this one up. Really cool plant, highly obscure. How often do I walk into a plant shop and find something that I've never even heard of? How good's that? And then, of course, we've got Phocea edulis. This is one of those fantastic cordiciform plants. Get those enormous tuberous roots under the ground. The thing I love about how this plant has appeared here is that those roots haven't actually been lifted up for display. They're still buried. they're still actively growing. You can actually see those roots bursting out of the drainage holes underneath the pot. What that tells me is that this plant hasn't been displayed here for a quick sale. You could easily raise it up, show off that root, sell it without any trouble, but it's not best practice in terms of growing this plant. And that is what tells me that we're dealing with proper plant expertise here. And that's why I'm so happy to put my faith into a shop like this one, which really knows how to grow its plants and grow them well. But undoubtedly my favourite part of this whole nursery is like a little secret tucked away in the back here. This is the rescue plant section. I like to call it the dead and dying section. But you can actually find some really good plants that have gone otherwise a little bit neglected in here. Some of the plants even that I've featured on the channel, like for example Myrtillocactus geometricans, which is now in desperate need of a prune. It was only about yay big when I got it here. Now, as you can see, it's an absolute beast. And also, that Adenium obesum that was the star of one of my videos about how to bring back a plant on the verge of death, just with a bit of a head chop. And now it's going fantastic as well. Absolutely gangbusters. The Adenium obesum that I bought at the nursery that was riddled with rot, beheaded it, looked like just a sad little stump. So we're going to head in there now and see if we can find any really good, interesting plants that need a little bit of love to bring them back from the brink. Now I know that some of these plants in here are in very poor shape, and that's totally okay because there's a sense of buyer beware. If you're coming into a rescue plant section, they're pretty well labelled. You know that it's a bit of a roll of the dice whether or not you're going to get something good or not. And that's part of the challenge, part of the joy of it. Unlike those plants at Bunnings that are full price, intermingled amongst everything else, and probably spreading their pest and their pestilence all over the place. These ones have been neatly quarantined away. And really, it just now becomes a matter of, do I want to participate in trying to bring a plant back? Treat it, care for it, quarantine it, look after it. And in some instances, it becomes very well worth it. I want to share with you a couple of interesting plants that I've noticed in here. First of all, way back in the back there's a huge Oreocereus. It's not looking like it's in the best of shape, but probably salvageable. But take a look at these Bocanias, 40 bucks, massive cordex on them, and honestly, I don't see anything wrong with them. They're just a little bit shabby, a few leaves stuck in the top. Give them a bit of a brush, and away you go. Outstanding, fantastic cordex plants. The plant that's really caught my eye, and I do think is coming home with me today, is this one. This is Euphorbia squarosa. Now, this is a cordiciform growing euphorbia. It's often medusoid, which means it'll have many arms coming out the top. Looking at it, I don't actually see anything wrong with it. It's just really, really lanky. And it's only $4. What's the harm, right? What reason is there not to get this thing today? Now, if I want it to be medusoid, what I'm going to need to do is chop its head off, and then it'll spring out a whole bunch of new arms and take on its more typical look. Not bad. Not a lot of work either. Now, you don't have to do what I do. Absolutely not. But I hope that this video has illuminated the difference in quality that you'll find in a local independent nursery compared with your local big box store. Because as far as I'm concerned, some of the risks associated are just far too big. Never mind the fact that I love the idea of supporting a local independent business as opposed to a huge multinational corporation. I hope you've enjoyed this wander through plant crimes and independent nurseries as much as I have in making it. If you enjoy my channel, Arid Zine, can I really recommend that you hit like, you hit subscribe, and if you like the merch that I'm wearing today, this cool Arid Zine Cactus Club t-shirt or any of the other ones that I offer, check those out. And if you're a particularly die-hard about what I do have a Patreon that's always putting out bonus content. So I encourage you, check that out as well. Anyway, that's it from me today. My name's Michael, this is Arid Zine, and I hope you've learned something and I hope you've enjoyed it. I'll catch you next time.